This is the Court Leader's Advantage, a podcast series for court professionals and by court professionals. Brought to you by thecourtleader.net and in cooperation with NACOM, the National Association for Court Management. The relationship between cities and their municipal courts is often marked by underlying tension. While courts must function independently, their close ties to city governments can create friction over revenue, resources, and oversight. Underfunded municipal courts frequently struggle with case backlogs, understaffing, and limited access to justice. Judicial independence and the autonomy of other elected officials, such as the Clerk of Court, can also be at risk when city governments exert influence over judicial appointments, salaries, or case outcomes. This interference undermines the court's ability to serve as impartial arbiters of the law. I'm Pete Kiefer, and welcome to the Court Leader's Advantage podcast series. This month, we'll explore the tension between cities and municipal courts. We'll also discuss how municipal courts can navigate these challenges. Joining me for this discussion are Lizzie Alipez, Court Clerk and Deputy Town Clerk for the town of Timnath, Colorado; Lori Tyak, elected Clerk of Court for the Franklin County Municipal Court in Columbus, Ohio; and Miha Kapacki, Court Administrator for the Grays Harbor County District Court in Montesano, Washington. Thank you all for joining today's podcast. In many cities, municipal courts are viewed as a revenue source, with fines and fees helping to fund city services. At the very least, they're often expected to be financially self-sufficient. Does your city perceive its municipal court as a revenue generator? And how does this perception affect the court operations? Lori Tyak?
Well, thank you, Peter. This is a really great question, and we deal with it almost every time there's a turnover at City Hall, especially with new employees. And I've been the Clerk of Court for many years now. But in the first few years when I took office, I attended a retreat with some new city council members, and they were going around the table talking about revenues. And one of them point blank looked at me and said, "Lori Tyak, how do you plan to raise revenues?" And I was really taken aback. And I said, the court is not a revenue generating agency, and neither is the clerk. We are here to collect the debt owed the court and to pass on from our collections to the city, the county, and the state. And so it was an educational process for that particular new city councilman, but I was shocked that that was something that was asked of me at a roundtable discussion. And so I've come up with a statement that I try to use every time I go for operating budget funds. And I just try to get the word out that not just the city of Columbus or our operating funds shouldn't just be covered by the city, but by everyone in the community who uses our court. So I believe the burden to fund Ohio's courts should not always fall on those who appear in courts, and instead should be shared by the common community to ensure fairness, equity, public trust, and confidence in the whole justice system.
Miha Kapacki?
Aloha. This was a good one because also, I work in a county, and similar to a city, we have commissioners that run their branch, and we're in the judicial branch. And it is very common to see district court, they're bringing in all this revenue. Look at all this revenue they brought in. And it was also an educational moment for us when we had to sit down with the budget department and explain, we don't necessarily keep all these revenues. Yes, a good portion goes to the general fund, but we're like a pass-through. We're taking filing fees, and we have to send filing fees back to Dispute Resolution Center. The state takes the majority of the filing fees, and anything from criminal charges to the little tiny infractions. The state gets a massive portion of that. So we started saying we never were revenue generators, but we are collectors. We're a pass-through. It comes to the court, it passes through us, and we send it to auditor's office, state, or whoever it belongs to. We also do contract with municipalities, and currently have one city that we also have to send their revenue back to them. It's a little bit of a tangled process, but when you explain to your other stakeholders that yes, we are not a revenue generating entity, and try to educate them more. That is, I think, key when they understand what's happening.
Given that limited jurisdiction courts, such as municipal courts, often fall under city oversight, concerns about judicial independence are common. How are your judges, court administrators, and clerks of court appointed and supervised? What steps have been taken to safeguard judicial neutrality? And are there additional reforms that could enhance independence and public trust? Lizzie Alipez?
Like I mentioned many times, our court is very small. So many things are done in the court, in the town, but we don't have much of our oversight from the city unless it's the town council itself. So our judge, well, not judges, our judge and a prosecutor are contracted. We don't have judge or prosecutor in-house. Usually the process is very simple. We do an RFP, they get interview as usual, and then if we decide, meaning the town manager decides who he wants and gets some feedback from me and my boss, the town clerk, they will go and ask the town council approval. And they report, they being prosecutor and judge, report directly to our town council. Me as a court clerk and deputy town clerk, being the only person in the court, I report directly to my boss. She then to the town manager, and that's how I got hired. Written, and on the second part of the question, we do not have formal written steps to safeguard the judicial neutrality, but I think since I've been here and previous court clerks, it is something that we try to do. What you do for the court and to be judicial, have the judicial neutrality, I think it's something that is obvious for us working in a courthouse or in a municipal court or county court. So something written, there's no steps, but I think we've been trying to do our best in promoting transparency through good communication, improving access to court sessions. In fact, the new House bill in Colorado, 25-1147, is requiring even small municipal courts and any municipal court to do streaming so that the court sessions are open to the public. But other than that, I think for me, it's something that is common sense to try to do everything in an open and a clear and transparent way, that will be something to promote the judicial neutrality.
Miha Kapaki?
In our court in Washington, we have a General Rule 29. And General Rule 29 pretty much outlines the roles of the judges, their term, and their duties and responsibilities. One thing, our judges are elected. They may be appointed if a term isn't finished. But one thing our judge has worked very hard to accomplish is making sure that the executive branch knows that we are completely separate branches of government. We understand their impact in setting our budget. Other than that, GR 29 makes our presiding judge the sole decision maker for our department. And so we've discussed those in meetings, and that's been helpful. I do admire what Lizzie said. It would be nice to have some kind of a House bill that would maybe mandate live streaming. That is not something that we have here in Washington. And so that is one thing that I've heard feedback on before from the community is, well, why can't I watch it on Zoom? You know, this is my husband or this is my daughter. I'd like to be able to watch. Well, we have an open court. You're welcome to appear. Well, I live out of state. And so I would agree that that would diminish public trust if we are not giving access to materials that could and maybe should be available to them. I think that would be something that I would recommend if we were trying to enhance the public trust and even safeguarding our neutrality. If we have nothing to hide, then we should be able to be on an open platform.
Mm-hmm. Many limited jurisdiction courts are underfunded, leading to operational inefficiencies. Cities frequently allocate proportionally more resources to policing than to court operations. Has your court faced budget shortfalls? What strategies have you used to advocate for better funding? Have your justice partners, such as public defenders and probation officers, or even IT staff, also struggled with inadequate resources? How has this affected court efficiency and access to justice? Lori?
Yes, we've all struggled with inadequate funding, and every year it seems that when we go to our funding authority, we have to get more creative. And what I mean by that is we use historical data and projected case statistics and what we see in the near future for those increases, just to advocate for the positive funding opportunities that we have. But I've also worked hard to build strong relationships with both city and county justice partners and city and state legislators. Sometimes it has to do with legislative mandates that are unfunded that can cause us to go into the red. So I think just part of it is building those relationships, building trust with your operations funding authority, and just looking towards, what you can do in the future to improve that relationship.
Miha?
Lori just keeps taking the words right out of my mouth. We have experienced significant budget cuts, particularly this year. We've seen it kind of a slow increase of budget cuts, and then we just slammed 2025. And so we also have had to get very creative. A big key thing that I had done was go through all the mandated things that courts are responsible for, whether it was interpreter costs. In Washington, our judges are mandated to be a part of the DMCJA, the Judges Association. We have a list of things we can't get around. We have to fund these. And so I made a list of those. And then we had also done caseload studies, staff to caseloads. We did comparisons and population counts of neighboring counties, and showed how, although we are a smaller rural court, where our caseloads were significantly high, comparable to courts that are off the I-5 corridor, and our staff count was over half than what these larger courts are dealing with. So we had to make a point that we are already running on fumes. Every staff member is overworked, and to cut budget, any budget cuts would have been going into our salary, because we had already kind of shaved off everything that we could. And so to be able to supply a 10% budget cut, we were already operating with 91% or so on salary. So that was very scary. So when we educated them, showed them some facts, put it all out there, we were able to come to an understanding. And essentially, we're taking it like 1 month at a time, and just checking in constantly, and just seeing how we are and where we are on our budget track.
Mm-hmm. Accusations of bias in pretrial release decisions and sentencings are not uncommon for municipal courts. Has your court faced such allegations? And if so, how did you respond? Lori?
My office, as the clerk's office, does not handle sentencing and pretrial release. We only record the court's decisions. But I think it's important to have everyone trained on bias, either unconscious bias or conscious bias. Just being made aware of it makes a difference in the way that we treat people. I think that's one of the issues that is important to everyone, is just to be aware of your biases.
Given these challenges, what advice would you offer to limited jurisdiction courts striving to maintain independence and efficiency while managing their relationship with city government? Lizzie?
Well, I think the most important ones are 5 for me. Establish clear boundaries regarding judicial decision-making. Prioritize transparent communication with the city officials. For us, being a small court, is mostly with our town council, because we as a town depend from Larimer County for other bigger stuff that will come to court, goes directly to Larimer County. But then the third one for me will be implementing efficient case management practices. As a small court, this one might not be directly, but I would recommend seeking separate funding from the budget if the court has the possibility to do so. And of course, maintaining a well-trained and qualified court judicial staff. And then trying to navigate this in the part of the fifth one, trying to navigate the complexities of balancing local needs with impartial justice.
Miha?
I think the biggest key for us is understanding that we play a very important role in our branch, and that we need to build positive and strong relationships to the members of the other branches that we work with. Kindness goes a long way. And if we have to find a way to work together, why not find a productive and fruitful way to work together instead of challenging each other and taking that stress home with us? So for me, I always make sure to, I like to be very transparent. When we have new House bills or legislation that is even just pending, hey, you know what? Let's make sure the commissioners are aware, because this could impact revenue. I mean, little things like that. When there isn't such a mystery of what's going on in the judicial branch, we not only gain public trust, we gain trust from our other stakeholders. And that's so important.
Lori?
Miha took the words right out of my mouth, and I agree with what Lizzie said too. We must live in the same world, Miha, right? I think to add to what Miha said, don't wait until budget time to ask for what you need. Talk to your funding authority, to other city and government officials. Just let them know what kinds of things that you're dealing with, new legislation, new mandates. Some of the goals that we have, I agree with Lizzie, is just try to find a new case management system that would create some new efficiencies. And so just getting the word out that, hey, we have like a 5-year plan here, and we're working to do an assessment, and then we're going after funding, so that everyone knows that we have a plan. It isn't just going to them and asking for money off the top. They know what's coming. They're also more aware of us as a separate government agency to understand what our needs are, and that there are no surprises on their end. So just incredibly taking a lot of time to work on those communication paths and to build those trusts and relationships will go a long way towards helping the courts.
I want to thank Miha, Lizzie, and Lori for their valuable insights on the dynamic tensions between cities and municipal courts. This is a fundamental issue inherent in our system of government, one that requires ongoing discussion and attention. As always, I extend my gratitude to you court professionals tuning into today's episode. Whether managing the pressures of city governance or assisting individuals in crisis, your work is vital to our system of justice. Thank you. Join us on Tuesday, April 15th for another episode exploring the challenges facing our courts. This has been the Court Leaders Advantage podcast series. I'm Pete Kiefer, and thanks for joining us today. Thanks for joining us today. The Court Leaders Advantage is a regular podcast series on courts and court administration. Today's episode will be available on our website, on the Court Leader website, on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, LinkedIn, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. Become part of the conversation. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, email us. Our address is podcasts@nacomnet.org. Did you hear an interesting comment by one of the panelists that you would like to listen to again, but you don't want to search the entire episode to find it? The additional resources section of the webpage has a question time marker sheet. Find the discussion question on the sheet, and next to it is the time that question was asked. You can quickly fast forward to that time and listen to the panelists' comments. Remember, if you don't have time to watch an episode, you can always listen to the audio version. Listen in your car or on the bus on your way to or from work. You never have to miss an episode. I'm Pete Kiefer, and on behalf of our guests, the Court Leader website, and the National Association for Court Management, thank you, and have a great day. The views, information, and opinions expressed during this episode are solely those of the host and the individual presenters. They do not necessarily represent the position of the National Association for Court Management.